Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're breaking down the science of productivity, taking a journey all the way from the microscopic biology of our brains right up to the macroscopic scheduling of our workdays. We are going to build what I like to call the pyramid of performance. It's all about laying down a biological foundation that actually supports the heavy cognitive demands of deep, focused work. All right, let's kick things off with a pretty jarring statistic. Longitudinal research shows that our average attention span on a single screen has plummeted to just 47 seconds. Think about that for a second. Back in 2004, that number was around 2.5 minutes. Today, we can barely make it to a single minute before our focus completely fractures. Because of this, sustained focus is now a highly rare and highly trainable competitive advantage. So, to fix this focus crisis, we're going to tackle this in 5 straightforward steps today. First, the modern focus crisis. Second, the biological foundations of focus. Third, the context-switching killer. Fourth, designing for deep work. And finally, measuring your progress. Let's dive right into step 1, the modern focus crisis. We really need to establish the sheer scale of the attention problem in the modern workplace. It's not just that we're easily distracted, it's the hidden cost of those distractions. Research out of the University of California found that when you give into a distraction, it takes an average of 23 minutes and 15 seconds to fully regain your focus. Literally, every single time a notification pings or a coworker pops in to say, "Hey, got a quick minute?" you aren't just losing that 1 minute, you are losing a massive chunk of cognitive momentum. And when you multiply that 23-minute recovery time by the dozens of switches we experience every single day, the financial stakes become absolutely alarming. A typical employee checks email 74 times a day and switches tasks every 10 minutes. Because of this constant ping-ponging, context switching drains an estimated $450 billion from the global economy every year. We're permanently busy, sure, but we're really struggling to make any meaningful progress. Moving on to step 2. Biological foundations of focus. You simply cannot achieve sustained, high-level productivity without first establishing the biological capacity for it. Before we even talk about scheduling or productivity apps, we have to talk about how you fuel your machine. There was a fascinating study on adults with type 2 diabetes that looked at how meal-induced changes in blood glucose impact the brain. They compared eating a high glycemic index carb, like white bread, to a low glycemic meal like pasta. The results were super clear. The high glycemic white bread resulted in much worse delayed verbal memory and executive function compared to the pasta. Bottom line, what you eat for lunch literally dictates how well you can think in the afternoon. The really interesting takeaway here is the clear negative association. The folks who experience the biggest food-induced spikes in blood glucose, which is measured as the area under the curve, or GAUC, displayed the poorest memory recall performance. When you eat foods that send your blood sugar on a roller coaster, you're actively draining your cognitive battery and wrecking your working memory in those crucial hours right after a meal. But beyond diet, we've got to look at physical endurance. A study on mice running on treadmills for 8 weeks showed that endurance exercise triggers mitochondrial biogenesis across multiple regions of the brain. It boosts key markers like PGC1 alpha, SIRT1, and citrate synthase while elevating mitochondrial DNA. In everyday terms, exercise is essentially building tiny, highly efficient cellular power plants directly in your mind. And this biological upgrade translates directly into stamina. In endurance capacity tests, the exercised mice absolutely crushed the sedentary group, running for 126.5 minutes compared to just 74 minutes before they hit fatigue. It turns out, the metabolic stress that happens in your brain during exercise stimulates the exact same mitochondrial growth that we see in our muscles. So, the absolutely crucial point is this. By pairing a low glycemic diet to prevent those cognitive draining glucose spikes with regular exercise to build up your brain's mitochondria, you forge a rock-solid biological foundation. You are physically increasing your brain's capacity for sustained mental energy. And honestly, without this, no productivity hack in the world is going to save you. That brings us to step 3, the context-switching killer. With our biological hardware fully upgraded, we need to remove the friction in our behavioral software. We touched on context switching a minute ago, but let's really look at the science of why it's so damaging. Researcher Sophie Leroy coined this brilliant term called attention residue. It proves that even brief, voluntary interruptions leave behind cognitive traces. When you switch from task A to task B, your brain doesn't just make a clean break. a residue of your attention actually remains stuck on task A, which actively degrades your focus and bumps up your error rate on task B. And this residue builds up from everywhere. You've got external triggers like your phone buzzing or a meeting popping up, but you also have internal triggers like sudden boredom or task avoidance. A famous Stanford study completely busted the multitasking myth, confirming that chronic multitasking actually impairs your cognitive control. Heavy multitaskers perform way worse at filtering out irrelevant information and managing their working memory than people who just focus on one single thing at a time.
Step 4. Designing for deep work. To fight back against this constant fragmentation and that sticky attention residue, we have to deliberately design systems that protect our best cognitive hours.
We have to be proactive here, because the modern work environment totally defaults to shallow work. Think about this. Knowledge workers spend 28% of their week just managing their inbox, and another 20% trying to hunt down internal information. That means almost half of our week is eaten up by shallow tasks that actively push out deep, meaningful focus. We absolutely have to fight back with structured scheduling. Cal Newport outlines 4 distinct approaches to scheduling this deep work. There's the monastic approach, which is just extreme isolation, the bimodal approach, where you divide up specific days or weeks, the rhythmic approach, which uses daily, scheduled blocks, and the journalistic approach, where you just grab opportunistic pockets of time whenever you can. Now, for most professionals navigating a standard busy workday, the rhythmic philosophy, blocking out the exact same non-negotiable time each day, is hands down the most reliable way to build an automatic habit. But you can't just block off time on your calendar and hope for the best. You have to design the environment around that time. Willpower alone is not going to cut it. You need to manipulate your physical space, maybe dedicating a specific desk just for deep work. You have to manage your digital space by ruthlessly auditing notifications and using website blockers. And you need to control your auditory environment with noise-canceling headphones or some consistent ambient sound. The goal is to make distraction much harder to access than continued focus. Finally, step 5. Measuring your progress. To make sure you're actually improving your cognitive stamina and not just spinning your wheels, you've got to meticulously track your capacity. Using the depth progression framework, you can track your growth weekly across 3 specific dimensions. Step 1 is duration. How long can you actually sustain unbroken focus? Step 2 is quality. Are you tackling genuinely complex tasks, or are you just doing routine admin and calling it deep work? And step 3 is recovery. How fast can you bounce back into a state of flow after an inevitable interruption? Tracking this reveals your real deep work capacity, not just the raw hours you spent sitting in a chair. And as you track all this, please keep your expectations grounded in basic biology. The renowned researcher Anders Ericsson noted that elite practitioners, we're talking top-tier violinists, grandmaster chess players, professional athletes, they typically max out at roughly 4 to 5 hours of deliberate practice a day. Your brain has a hard biological limit. If you're a beginner, start by targeting just 60 to 90 minutes of tracked deep work, and maybe add 15 minutes a week as your stamina builds up. By merging these 2 worlds, fueling your brain with a low glycemic diet and exercise-induced mitochondria, while simultaneously protecting your schedule with smart environment design and time blocking, you literally alter your psychology. You set yourself up to be truly, sustainably effective, which leaves us with one vital question to think about as we wrap up today. Will your next 47 seconds be spent switching contexts or building depth?